This morning, is President Trump's legislative agenda in jeopardy? A new poll out finds that support for his huge tax and spending bill is neither big nor beautiful. 53% oppose the legislation, just 27% support it. These new numbers come as some Republican senators are balking at the sweeping changes it would make, even as the president is pushing Congress to pass it before July 4th. With us now, former White House Deputy Cabinet Secretary under President Biden, Daniel Coe, and former Trump administration official Matt Mowers. Matt, this is underwater. His big bill is underwater by almost 2-1. Is this what an uphill battle looks like?
No, and I wouldn't be concerned about one single poll. And if you actually break down what is in the bill, and I do think that's going to be the key thing for the White House and others, is to message exactly what's in this bill once it gets passed. Because if you actually break it down individually, it's overwhelmingly popular. You're keeping one of the largest tax cuts in American history that, if this bill doesn't pass, will result in a large tax increase for working class Americans. But if it passes, will actually keep tax rates low for working class Americans. It includes child tax credits. It includes immigration funding that, as we're seeing right now with what's been happening in California the last few days, what we've seen in our communities throughout the last few years, we desperately need that type of border funding and additional support for ICE and CBP. That is all in this bill. And when you actually break it down individually, it's overwhelmingly popular. It's going to be on the president, the White House, and members of Congress to go and sell that once the final bill is passed.
I will tell you, I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but in this one poll where they break down parts of it, it's even more unpopular. When you talk about Medicaid cuts or lack of increases in Medicaid spending are underwater by even more than the bill is.
John, because,
go ahead.
John, but that's because they word it as cuts. That's not what this bill does. What it does is it puts work requirements to ensure that those who are able-bodied individuals are not receiving taxpayer-funded Medicaid dollars, and the Medicaid dollars are actually going to those who truly need it. So it really comes down to how you worded the question, and if it was worded that way, which I believe it was, it's actually very misleading.
I understand what you're saying here, and this lot hangs on how the White House and Republicans sell this. Daniel, how can Democrats use this next few weeks to try to sink this bill?
Well, to your point, the poll clearly shows 47% of people think that Medicaid spending should increase. Only 10% think it should decrease. And so the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says that 11 million people will lose their health insurance with this current proposal. It'll add $2.4 trillion to the deficit. I think that's pretty unpopular with the American people. And I think that everybody should be concerned about what is being proposed as work requirements, saying that people need to do more to deserve the health care that they deserve, is actually not true. 90% of people who are on Medicaid are either working or preparing to work or training to work. That's the truth about what Americans need, and people are realizing now what this bill could do for their families and for their health care, and I think it's incredibly unpopular, as you see in the numbers.
I will say I perhaps phrased that question incorrectly, because I'm not sure the Democrats have much to do here. This is all on the Republican side, whether the Republicans can get all the votes that they need to pass this. That means enough Republican votes in the Senate, and they got one guy who's wavering and angry. And that's Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who apparently, according to him, got disinvited to a White House picnic and ain't happy about it. Listen to what he said.
I think I'm the first senator in the history of the United States to be uninvited to the White House picnic. Just the level of immaturity is beyond words. They've decided they want to declare war on my family and exclude us from the White House. And I just think it's incredibly petty. It really makes me lose a lot of respect I once had for Donald Trump.
So, Dan, you just came from the White House, basically, and the Biden administration had some issues with Democratic senators at times, including the likes of Joe Manchin and others. What's the best way to get a reluctant senator on board? Disinviting him?
Look, I think it's really important that no matter what your party is or no matter what ideology, that you reach not only just across the aisle, but within your own party to bring people to yes. I mean, we all saw very publicly the original BBB, the Build Back Better bill, had a lot of struggles, in part because Senator Manchin couldn't get on board. But instead of alienating him or mocking him, President Biden reached to him, worked together, and we were able to pass one of the most successful climate legislations in the history of America. And so I think that is the kind of collaboration that Americans are really yearning for. I mean, the one thing that this poll really shows is just how divided people are right now. If you look at the difference between what Republicans are favoring or Democrats favoring. And so I think people are itching for a little leadership right now that shows that even if you disagree, you're going to come together and figure out a way to yes.
Matt, I grew up reading about Lyndon Johnson literally leaning on senators, literally leaning on them and grabbing them by lapels to get votes passed. So there's a place for hardball politics here, but only if it works, right? Is this working, do you think?
Well, we'll see. I don't think you're going to change Rand Paul's mind. I don't think there's much you can do to change Rand Paul's mind. I mean, anyone who's followed him knows that, he kind of gets stuck in his ways, for better or for worse. The shame of it is that clearly, if you look at even this polling and you're extrapolated, I got to imagine that if you go to voters in Kentucky and say, do you want your sitting U.S. senator to oppose Donald Trump's bill, which is going to encapsulate the agenda he campaigned on? That ain't going to be very popular for Rand Paul. And at the end of the day, that's going to be, if he votes for this bill, that's going to be the reason why. It's because his constituents are going to be overwhelmingly for it. And he's going to be concerned about the political implications. If not, I do just want to touch on one thing Dan said. Actually, back in the Medicaid piece, Dan even said 90% of recipients are deserving of it. That means there's 10% of fraud. And that's exactly what this bill does. It addresses the 10% of fraud that we're seeing in the Medicaid system to ensure that those 90% who do earn it actually we can afford to give them those benefits. So, I think we're actually saying the same thing, maybe a little bit of a different way.
Matt Mowers, Dan Coe, great to see both of you today. You can both come to my picnic. Invitation stand. Sarah.
He never invites me, but that's cool. All right, new this